Hey, there's Daniel on Let's Semi Talk, and today we're going to talk about a game that nobody remembered or remembers at that very most, which was the 2005 so-called big hit, Advent Rising. Yeah, that feels such a long time ago, but yeah, I want to talk about that game for some apparent reason. The reason being is it's actually one of my favorite games. Even though it was like Mass Effect at the time, where it was supposed to be a planned trilogy. It was supposed to be like the biggest thing ever, kind of one of those games that had the huge hype, but apparently it failed to deliver. So it was made by Majesco Entertainment, and like I said, it was supposed to be a planned trilogy, the big old hype, everything, spin-offs and stuff like that. But as the game did lower than expected in retail, not to mention it got panned by critics, a lot of critics, so it was one of those games nobody remembers, but did have probably, if at the time when I played it, probably one of the best game soundtracks ever. Because what was funny is back in 2005 when I first played that game, or actually what's funny is prior to that, the games I played, because I probably got an Xbox probably around that time as a kid, and what's funny is I wasn't the greatest knowledge of games, so I had no idea what was coming out, and what's so funny is when I first saw this game came out, I'm like, whoa, this is something different. Because this is back then before I ever saw, like, this could be a real big, epic, cinematic game, and I thought that was, like, the coolest thing ever, because back then I had this completely different mindset, where I didn't think a game could tell a good story, or have a good orchestral piece, and be epic, and give you emotions and stuff like that. And yeah, it was funny. And it was even funnier is when I first saw a trailer for it was when I was at the movies with my family. And I saw a trailer and my sister goes, "Hey, is that like Halo 7 or something like that?" And I started laughing like that. No, and I'm like, "Hey, this is kind of cool looking game." And then later I was watching TV and I saw a trailer and there was this 1 second I saw like, who's this crazy ass looking character fighting the main character, and I thought that was so freaking cool. I picked up on the game just on that 1 second. I thought that was so funny that I would pick up an entire game just off that 1 second trailer, or just that one part of the trailer, and I'm like, so I went and picked up the game, freaking loved it. Of course, now looking back on it, it's buggy as hell. It had awkward frame rate stuff would slow down, but I really don't care. It's one of those games that I absolutely loved playing. It was actually one of the first games I actually ever played that actually had something close to you do one thing and it would have a different outcome. Of course, they didn't do shit to the game, but it was still pretty cool. It was the first time I ever played something like that, where there's one episode where you were kind of like, it didn't have the greatest plot ever, but I thought it was decent, and so at the decent plot, there's one part where the aliens come and invade. It's a pretty standard plot. Aliens come, destroy all humanity, and there was only like 3 humans left or something like that. Pretty kind of a bleak plot if you really think about it. It was also one of the first games I ever played that had a situation go from bad to worse to worse to worse, which I probably could. My best assumption is that why a lot of people didn't like it, because I almost had a French ending in some respect. And speaking of French ending, what sucked is that this game, even though it was supposed to be a bland trilogy, had probably one of the biggest freaking cliffhangers ever. It's like, ooh, who's this alien coming out of the snow and stuff like that. But I'm talking so much about the endings and stuff like that, I ain't even freaking talking about the game. So the game you had you playing as space pilot Gideon Wyatt and your brother who looks identical, and stuff like that. So aliens first arrive to this planet, and they're like, "Whoa, aliens first arrived!" So you go and visit it, and next thing you know, they tell you that we didn't come in peace, we came to warn you and stuff like that. And they're like, "Warn us from what?" And then all of a sudden, these aliens come out as soon as they freaking said it and freaking start destroying everything. So it's basically an extermination, which is pretty freaking dark for the first 15 minutes of the game. So long story short, you got your generic girlfriend, which I don't even remember what the hell brought them together. But anyways, like I said, didn't have the greatest plot, greatest character explanation, but it was still a very fun game. I still like it, and man, I got sick. I'm still sick. I got sick over the break, but anyways, I'm drifting on. So anyways, basically it's just take any story from any science fiction movie, or at least standard science fiction, Avatar if not that, and just place it into what basically the plot of the story is. But believe it or not, like I said, when I was a kid, this was like the coolest thing ever. Like, this was the first game I ever seen that had like the big old freaking big old epic score and stuff like that. I'm like, this was the coolest thing because this was the first time as a kid I ever saw. I'm like, well, this is the first time a game could really like just impress the hell out of me. And I thought the combat was decent. You know, it had that annoying ass camera. Once you shoot one thing, it would freaking target the other thing. Yeah, I do remember that thing being frustrating, but you know, I got past it. It was actually one of the first games I ever played that had the freaking widescreen with the little black thing, and then if you shoot like some big bubble thing, the whole screen would waver a little bit, which I thought was freaking cool. But man, I'm not mentioning anything. I'm not mentioning anything important. Like, I'm not the greatest, but you know, I'm still new at this talking on the internet. But anyways, what's funny is I think my biggest memory is how like nobody remembers this game. And I remember when they made a big deal out of it when this game came out. They say buy Advent Rising and enter to win $1 million. So I do remember that, and I thought it was cool. But like I said, I'm real fuzzy, and even looking on Wikipedia, it's not real helpful on what the hell happened what the hell happened to that thing. So you know, according to Wikipedia, it said something about because or something like that, or it wasn't the contest wasn't fair, so they never had any money, so they just gave out in prizes or something like that. So that's about as much as I know about it. And I ain't gonna talk about it on the internet, but anyways, I want to talk about one of the biggest things that most had the biggest impact besides its good story or semi-good story and awesome visuals for the time. You know, bright colored environments and great action and stuff like that was that 1 second that I mentioned. So when I was watching the trailer, I'm like, it looks kind of cool. Then all of a sudden I saw like the freaking coolest, weirdest looking alien ever. I'm like, whoa, that is so cool. Who the hell is that? And based off that one brain teaser thing, I freaking had to pick up the game, and I picked up the game, and that actually ends up being one of my favorite boss fights ever. You know, I don't know why that sounds lame after playing even cooler games, but you know, like it was, I don't know, there's something about it I liked it because it was actually hard, and even in the end, you don't freaking defeat the boss. That person kicks your ass. So I thought that was kind of cool, but like I said, it's actually what's funny is after really thinking about it and looking at other videos on the internet, apparently it's one of those bosses that's hard to play, but you don't know what the hell you're doing, so you have to assume what you're doing because all it says is defeat so and so, whatever the heck the alien's name is. And what I like about it is that person really freaking powerful. You have to like crouch down in some style. Like I said, this is not real clear on what the hell you have to do. Freaking can't hit that person. And I remember they have like a jetpack. They fly up and they fly down. Like, gosh, I remember being kind of, I don't know how the hell I beat that, but it was like one of my favorite things ever because you had the awesome music playing and stuff like that. And I thought, like I said, I thought it was one of the coolest freaking bosses ever. One of the coolest looking aliens. Like I think I remember seeing. Like, you know, I like watching science fiction and stuff like that. For some apparent reason, this is one of those creatures that just stuck in my mind. I'm like, that is so freaking cool. And believe it or not, I love it so much. I actually made my own goofy character based off of that. It was funny. Is whoever thought a freaking character gets killed in 3 minutes and could ever have such a lasting impact? And almost like it was like one of those characters that if they played the card right, could have been a really cool antagonist or something like that for that game. But you know, I guess they played the Star Wars effect where they killed off a potentially cool character in 10 minutes. But you know, oh well. But still, I guess maybe because that time in between, you had this really cool time to talk about something, but or really, you know, experience something. So yeah, like I said, this game only had, from what I remember, like 3 or 4 bosses and stuff like that. But I remember that one boss between the bounty hunter was like so freaking cool, and so I remember that I remember that mostly from Advent Rising, and also my biggest inspiration in growing up as a kid and drawing and stuff like that was actually the style they used. Not specifically the color art style, which is funny. I didn't even notice that first until one day I was showing the game to my sisters, and I'm like, "Hey, they're abstract or out of proportion." I'm like, what are you talking about? And they say, "Hey, their legs are longer." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then actually I really looked at them like, hey, look at that. They do have different proportions, which a lot of people didn't like, but I freaking loved it. That was the first time I ever seen something that showed me that, hey, you can create something you don't have to create everything proportion. You can play around and create your own things. And what's funny is, like I said, like with Saints Row, where I was told my friends about where I thought this game was geared towards women, this thing, another goofy conversation popped up where I was saying, where I feel like this game feels like exactly what Mass Effect could have, or what Mass Effect was like, what Advent Rising could have been. Because what's funny is I didn't even like Mass Effect when it came out. When I first saw it, I'm like, ugh, it looks like a in my snobby kind of accent. It looks like Advent Rising. So, so that's the reason why actually I never did pick up Mass Effect, was because I thought it looked like Advent Rising. But what's funny is it actually has a similar art style, and they both have a similar art style. Hell, the ending of Mass Effect takes place in a freaking shitty galactic government. Like in Mass Effect and Advent Rising, they got a shitty galactic government that doesn't even work, and nobody believes humans. Funny similarities. And then you fight against a big boss, and like in Mass Effect, we had Ceres, or whatever the hell his name was. You fight against him, and he denies the council. The council denies everything, and the council's like, maybe. And then all of a, like in Mass Effect, the council doesn't believe you either. And then at the end, big whoop, you fight against the big monster or the big enemy, and ends thing. And then like in Mass Effect, you got this giant thing, and gosh, I'm not making no sense at all. But that's funny. I thought how similar it was to Mass Effect. And then you got to save the universe. And then when I first saw the biotics, I'm like, hey, that's like those cool powers you get in Advent Rising. That's why I thought it was so similar. They had the same art style and color scheme, and kind of that cool futurism of the 80s, or whatever the hell that style was, and stuff like that. And also, like on Mass Effect, they had that I found similar is that they both had a shitty car that you can drive. In Mass Effect, they had this stupid ass buggy that was freaking roll over every 5 seconds. You go over a rock, you roll over, and in Mass Effect they had the fucking Mako, which was just as a shitty vehicle. I thought that was so funny because they looked exactly similar to each other. They both couldn't fucking drive. They both had jets. You press like the A button, they both fly up, and they fucking don't do anything. You roll your ass over, and they were both just as shitty to drive. And they both had like I think a turret. Mass Effect they had the turret, and then in Advent Rising they had a shitty turret that didn't do anything to the car or didn't do anything to the enemies. And I thought that was funny that they both had a shitty vehicle. So that's also another reason why I thought they were similar to Mass Effect. And yeah, so yeah, this is that's basically what I wanted to talk about Advent Rising. I mentioned nothing important, but it was something interesting. So stay tuned for some future videos, and yeah, so thank you for watching.